Hi everybody, hope this video finds you safe and well wherever you are in the world. Thanks to those who took the time a week or so ago to comment on my post where I asked for ideas that you wanted me to film videos on, specifically conditions and their management. Now a lot of these you'll find already exist in my Facebook video section. Have a search through, that has become quite a lot of videos over the last couple of years, so it may not be the first thing you find, but I will update all of them and I'll add the new ones as requested. So it's probably the easiest way to go through these is to go at them, the ones that were most commonly asked for. And we'll kick it off this week with calf strains. So this is a really common injury that happens within endurance athletes. And right now, all around the world, it seems a topical thing that people are talking about. What I would signpost a lot of you to, if you want to take the time to sit down and read in depth, to assist this video is Brad Beer, running physio in Australia, under Pogo Physio, P-O-G-O, has done a fantastic blog in the last couple of weeks chatting at depth about the things I'm going to talk about today. So definitely check Brad's work out and that particular blog. Let's chat about the calves first. It's pertinent to understand what it is and where they are. So the anatomy of the calf, we're talking about the muscles that live below the knee at the back of the leg. Now there's a numerous bunch of muscles that live there, some deep, some more superficial. And for the sake of this video, to keep it relatively short and concise, we're going to ignore a couple and talk about the main 2 or 3 that are the issue. So please do take some time to go away and look at a little muscle called plantaris. But that's not the one we really want to focus on today, but it is relevant in some people's cases. What we really want to think of is the Gastroc and the Soleus. Now you'll see a picture pop up in a minute which shows you the anatomy of these muscles, and then I'll be back to talk a bit more about them. So looking at that image, you'll see 2 muscles. The gastroc, which is that cannonball shape, traditional muscle that we think of as the calf. The one that pokes out when we're standing on tiptoes, walking in heels, those type of activities. And then the soleus, that flatter muscle that lives deep underneath the gastroc. Now they're both important. The soleus far more important in recent years than we perhaps previously realised. Fantastic work by the likes of Seth O'Neill is showing us just how involved in propulsion and force production those muscles are and how integral they are to performance when we're running. When we injure them, it's very rarely anything more than a simple case of training error. Sudden spikes in training, sudden changes in terrain, speed, intensity, volume are normally the underlying causes. Running gait and biomechanics is often blamed when effectively, unless you're really overstriding when you run, then there's no greater chance of injuring yourself than most of the other things that we look at. So keep the training in tune, progressive, and common sense normally is enough of an approach to manage that. And then potentially think about some strength work. Now we have a really poor evidence base to suggest that strength work will reduce the risk of injury, much contrary to common belief. But we know that for performance, by being a stronger, more robust system, it can help. And if we're going to be doing strength work to help with our performance, then it might just be the icing on the cake to help in whatever format the evidence suggests with reduced injury risk. But let's say the worst happens and you get injured, and now it's a case of trying to rehabilitate you back. Well, the first thing to work out is what's injured and how severe it is. So there's some simple tests that will be able to help us, but primarily the first thing you do is look at the symptoms. Most of you will be affected when you're walking, running, hopping, skipping, jumping. Everyday activities, getting in and out of cars, going up and down stairs may be limited. And the degree of that restriction may indicate the degree of injury. But to touch, it will be tender, and we would certainly look to see where it's tender to touch to help diagnose which muscles are involved. And then any bruising, any visible or palpable deformities in that structure will all aid to giving us a clue of the severity. Now the 2 most common areas to find would be the medial head, so this inside bulky bit of the calf, and poking and prodding in there would normally tell us what's going on. And then what we call the musculotendinous junction. So the bit at the top of the Achilles in the middle where the two bulky heads meets. They tend to be the most susceptible places, most common places for calf strain injury. Now I mentioned testing the capacity of those tissues, and that's done with a simple calf test, a heel raise test, stepping up onto your tiptoes. Ideally we'll do it on a single leg, and we'll test it one of two ways. If we get you to do it with a straight leg, then we're really focusing on the gastroc, because the anatomy of the gastroc is that it starts on the Achilles tendon and goes up over the knee joint to attach to your thigh bone. Whereas if we do that test with your knee bent, then we're switching focus onto the soleus, because despite its anatomy starting in the same place as the gastroc, it does not cross the knee joint. It attaches still on the shin bone below the knee. So an easy way to differentiate the tests. Now it's a combination of the tests that we do, the palpation findings, the symptoms that you report, and the history that you tell us about your running and your injury that give us the diagnosis of where the issue is and how bad it is. And when it comes to a strain, which is effectively a tear, it's a loss of integrity in the structure of that muscle fibre, then we tend to give them a grading of 1, 2 or 3. 1 being very minor, could take 7 to 10 days or around that time scale to get you back up and running, with a 3 being maybe three months or more to get you back up and running. And many endurance athletes are shocked that although it's a really good prognosis and you'll get back and you'll all be fine, the time scale often is months more than weeks. And it's people who tend to accelerate or rush through that rehab can often have a problem, and then recurrence happens, or the delayed return to running can take its time. So how do we treat you? How do we get you guys back running and fighting fit? Well, the good news is, because this is such a common injury, then we're really well versed in the therapy world at working with muscle strains and working with calf strains. So be confident that you'll get back fighting fit, and we'll get you there as soon as we can. But the most important thing is, don't rush it. Most people in a desperate, well-intentioned maneuver to try and get back quick will cause a recurrence, limit the progress we can make, and just delay the process going forward. The simple process, which will depend the timescales and the nitty-gritty of what's combined in each one, will vary person to person. But effectively, we would try and approach it in this way. The first thing to do is modify your symptoms and calm it down a little bit. In the more severe cases, we're probably going to ask you to stop running for a little bit, but we'll try our hardest to avoid that. And certainly in the mild to moderate cases, we can modify, and we can maybe give you other training aspects to itch that scratch that you all have to keep training, but without causing stress to that area as it's settling down. Now, you may want to foam roller, stretch, have some massage, do those things that you think may help or enjoy, but we have to be careful. In an acute strain, we certainly don't want to be stretching it, massaging it and rubbing and poking it. And I'm quite reserved about the use of those things through this rehab process per se. But if you're doing all the good things at the right appropriate time, then I won't lose any sleep over those things if you think they're helping at a certain time and point. Once we've settled the symptoms, the key thing is to build up your capacity. We want that calf complex, those muscles, to be more robust than they were, to be able to cope with what you ask them to do when you get back. And there's no magic ingredient here, it's just some good old-fashioned strength work to get your capacity up. Remember earlier on in the video we chatted about doing things with a straight leg or a bent leg? Then that's when we apply these principles. We'll combine both, but if we know that one muscle was the primary cause of problem through the capacity test, then I may bias my training to more straight leg or bent leg. You'll see at the very end of the video a little montage of suggested exercises. It's by no means exhaustive, but the type of things you can do. And you may start with non-weight bearing when you're on the floor. It may be sort of standing assisted stuff, right up to double leg and single leg work with added resistance to progress your load and your load capacity. And that will depend on you, the time you've got available, how you progress, how you're healing, and where we need you to get back to. So you've worked through that. We've tested and retested those capacity tests. Now, as an aside, for you guys who aren't injured or when you're fighting fit, doing a single leg calf raise test with a finger support against the wall, trying to come all the way up onto your tiptoes and then slowly lowering back down with that whole repetition taking 5 seconds, you may be surprised of what the normative data, which you'll see now, suggests that an athlete, a normal person should do, a healthy, normal population. And I would add even more onto those numbers for an endurance athlete because of the nature of the things you do. So you may find that for some of you, you never knew that you were a ticking time bomb for a calf strain because you'd never tested that capacity. I often see many endurance athletes who struggle to get into double figures, yet run massive volumes. And if you translate 1 times body weight and you're struggling to get double figure numbers, and then the 2 to 6 or more times body weight for 1,000 steps a mile when you're running, you can see the disparity in why these things can often happen. So we've settled the symptoms down. You've kept your cardiovascular training going in whichever way we can. And we've built capacity. And we're at a point where we think we can tolerate some returning to running. To bridge that gap, I would definitely be looking at some plyometric type work. Double leg onto single leg with some hops and some jumps and some skip type movements. It's a real nice bridge between having non-dynamic strength and capacity and then learning to begin that run return program. And then the final stage is to return you to running. And for some of you, it may be right back down to a walk-run program. For some of you, it may be a modified run program to get you back up. But the fundamental thing to appreciate with this, it's not a fitness program. We know you love running and we know it's really important for you to get back running. But at this stage, we're trying to train that calf complex to tolerate running. And the fundamental flaw I see in return to run programs is people trying to make it a fitness program. I'm only running for a small portion or a small proportion of my session, so I'm going to go hard and I'm going to go fast and I'm going to be sweating and breathing hard because they think it's the right thing to do. But it's really not, and it's just going to limit your progress. Coming up soon, you'll see my example walk run, and I set really specific parameters for this as far as the speed that people walk and the speed that people run at. Depending on your progress, I may accelerate you through the program faster than others. I may take you back a step. We may tread water on a particular week before kicking you forward. It'll just be based on the communication we have before we kick you forward. And then finally, weeks or months later, you are running and we can really work on developing your fitness and your tolerance to that once we know we have a system that can cope with it. We don't know if your risk of injury is reduced going forward. If we build capacity to be more robust than we were before, we'd like to think it would be. But then we would normally just let you crack on and do all the things you guys and girls love to do. Now, many therapists, myself included, are doing online consultations while we're in this difficult situation that we're all in. So do reach out to your therapists or someone else online if you wanted a more bespoke answer, you wanted to discuss your particular condition and the type of things that would work well for you. Otherwise, stay safe, stay well. Hope this has helped you guys gain a little bit more understanding of that calf strain. You can apply the principles that we talked about of why they happen, what is the injury itself, and how you would rehab back to any muscle strain, wherever it is in the body. It would just be the tests and exercises that change. The timescales and everything are pretty similar. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back next week with a different condition. See you soon.